My presentation is on the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA. So some introduction information. DACA allows some individuals who were brought to the U.S. as children to receive a renewable 2-year period of deferred action from deportation and eligibility for work permits. The problem is, although these individuals gain work authorization and protection from deportation, it has many court challenges and a lack of a pathway to citizenship. This is caused because DACA was first introduced and intended to be implemented as a temporary relief, not permanent legal status for these individuals. This causes DACA recipients and their families to face numerous barriers when trying to have access to health care or other benefits. They also face economic insecurity due to the possibility of their work permit not being renewed. And it causes fear of deportation and family separation. So, some approaches that the Trump administration had during his first administration was that they attempted to end DACA in 2017. The Attorney General at the time, Jeff Sessions, announced that the administration would rescind DACA, claiming it was unconstitutional and created by executive overreach. Additionally, the Department of Homeland Security stopped accepting new DACA applications and said that renewals would only be accepted for a limited time. They also continued restrictions after a Supreme Court ruling that said that the administration's attempt to end DACA was unlawful because it failed to follow proper legal procedures. Some of these restrictions included the DHS Secretary Chad Wolf issuing a memo in July of 2020 limiting DACA, including no new applications, and renewals were shortened from 2 years to 1 year. The Biden administration had a completely different approach. They took several actions to protect and strengthen DACA, although it has faced ongoing legal and political challenges. One of the approaches from the Biden administration was that they restored DACA. When President Biden took office in January of 2021, one of his first executive actions was to fully restore DACA, which had been limited under the Trump administration. This meant that new applications could once again be accepted and renewals for existing recipients could continue. The administration also strengthened legal standing attempts. In 2021, the Department of Homeland Security issued a proposed rule to codify DACA into federal regulation, rather than it only existing as an executive policy. The goal of this was to make DACA more legally durable in the face of lawsuits challenging its legality. Additionally, Biden repeatedly urged Congress to pass legislation creating a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers, emphasizing that their executive actions alone can't secure their future. The administration also maintained protections for current DACA recipients. The administration continued work permits, deportation protections, and eligibility for benefits, like driver's licenses and certain scholarships for DACA recipients who renew. As for current policy, although DACA continues to provide deferred action and work authorization and renewal, new initial applications are effectively blocked while litigation proceeds. DHS is barred from granting initial DACA requests under the final rule due to the injunction. Additionally, there are updates indicating that CMS will exclude DACA recipients again from the definition of lawfully present for the marketplace as of 60 days after publication of a 2025 final rule, meaning coverage eligibility may be removed. Also, as for pathway to citizenship, DACA itself does not provide a pathway to lawful permanent resident status, a green card, or a U.S. citizenship, though some legislation has been introduced to create those pathways, but those bills have not become law. For example, the DREAM Act of 2023 would create conditional permanent resident status and allow removal of conditions and eventual citizenship. Also, the American Dream and Promise Act of 2025 has been reintroduced to provide a citizenship pathway for DACA recipients. Positions and opinions on pathway to citizenship varies from different political parties, public opinion, and experts in the field. The Democratic Party broadly supports a legislative pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients as part of a comprehensive immigration reform. Many Democrat candidates explicitly endorse providing legal status and eventual citizenship for those in DACA and protecting Dreamers and incorporating them into permanent immigration reform legislation. Meanwhile, the Republican Party is mainly skeptical of or opposed to a broad pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, especially without strong borders or enforcement provisions. In recent data, support among Republicans for a pathway to citizenship is much lower than among Democrats, though there has been some shift. As for public opinion, a poll shows that about 68% of registered voters support legislation in 2024. There is also varying opinion among interest groups. Many emphasize that deferred protection alone, such as DACA, is insufficient, and they stress that the need for permanent lawful status and citizenship rather than just temporary relief. For example, the American Business Immigration Coalition is made up of 1,200 plus CEOs, business owners, and trade associates that call for bipartisan legislation that provides a path to citizenship to all Dreamers with or without DACA. Additionally, the Center for American Progress is a think tank stating that strengthening DACA and ultimately ensuring a pathway to citizenship for the nation's Dreamers is critical for family stability and economic contribution. Many experts in the field support a pathway to citizenship. For example, Associate Professor of Political Science at UC San Diego, Tom K. Wong, said, "Year after year, the results are clear. DACA is crucial, but only a pathway to citizenship will yield the permanent protections that DACA recipients deserve." Legal practitioners analyzing DACA's litigation note that the program's legal future remains uncertain and that it is imperative for Congress to act quickly to codify a clear pathway to citizenship for these people who only know the United States as home. For a stakeholder analysis, we look at Dreamers. Dreamers are the recipients of DACA. They are very supportive of a pathway to citizenship because they seek permanent legal protection instead of just temporary renewal process. As for the executive branch, the current administration is strongly against a pathway to citizenship as they seek to end DACA. Business and industry groups support DACA heavily as they believe Dreamers contribute to the economy and the workforce. As for the U.S. and public voters, they are mostly supportive of a pathway to citizenship for various reasons, including moral, practical, and economic. Here are the three top policy alternatives. Number one is maintaining DACA without a pathway to citizenship. This would keep protections from deportation and work permits for Dreamers, but without offering legal permanent residence or citizenship. Some pros of this is that it maintains labor and education stability for Dreamers. It is politically moderate as it keeps current benefits but avoids full legalization. And it is easier to sustain legally since it stays within executive authority. Though there are some cons, which keeps recipients in legal limbo, and it doesn't address long-term immigration reform. There would be minimal administrative costs, as it would maintain the costs that we are experiencing right now. The second alternative is phase out DACA and encourage congressional legislation. This would gradually end DACA while urging Congress to enact replacement immigration law. There are many pros that come with this, such as it reinforces congressional authority, and it could yield permanent reform. Additionally, there are appeals to enforcement-focused voters. The cost for this would be there would be enforcement and deportation costs. There would be political backlash, as it would be divisive, and there would be social costs, such as displacement of long-term residents and a loss of trust from the community. The third policy alternative is conditional pathway to citizenship. This would offer permanent legal status and eventual citizenship for dreamers who meet criteria such as education, work, military, or clean record. The pros to this it is a balanced approach, and it would have strong public and business support. It would also be beneficial for the economy and social long term. Some of the costs would be implement and processing costs, but they would be offset by higher tax revenue. There would also be political costs because it would require bipartisan deal making. My policy recommendation is the conditional pathway to citizenship. This would begin as someone who is eligible, as DACA has already implemented, would be someone who has lived in the U.S. for a certain number of years and entered before a specific cutoff. There would be a status as the current DACA program is, where recipients are protected from deportation and have work authorization. After a period of time of going to school and or working and a background check are completed, they can receive a green card. After holding a green card for a period of time, meeting tax and legal checks, and passing naturalization tests, they can become U.S. citizens. There are many pros to this recommendation, including economic benefits, as studies show legalization and citizenship increases wages, entrepreneurship, and long-term tax contributions. Additionally, national security, as needed background checks and tax compliance can strengthen oversight. There is also a moral justification, as most DACA recipients have had little control over their immigration stand and have grown up as Americans. Though there are some cons to this recommendation, the USCIS would need major staffing and funding boosts to process so many new applications in addition to existing ones. And exclusions concerns. The cutoff dates or tax compliance rules may exclude a subset of people who have already been in the U.S. for decades. And these are my sources. Thank you.